Today's video, I'm going to cover BlackBerry stock because I want to go over a little bit of additional information from my latest video where I stated that what you could expect for Q4 earnings for fiscal year 2025, did a year-over-year comparison, quarter-over-quarter comparison, looked at street estimates, expectations, forecasts, all stuff. I encourage you to watch that video so at least you're aware of what you could expect for Q4 earnings, which will be reported on April 2nd, 2025. This time around at 8 a.m. versus 5:30 p.m. In my opinion, I think that's a good sign for potential surprises, which I will be covering in this video as well. And at the same time, I do live stream these events and cover quite a bit of BlackBerry videos. So if you're interested to be notified when I do upload my latest video and live stream these events, consider following and subscribing to be notified when I do. And about 10-15 minutes before the conference call, they usually release the earnings numbers, which hopefully I have time this time around, but I usually do cover them before the conference call to do a year-over-year comparison, quarter-over-quarter comparison, and comparison with street estimates. At least you're aware of how the numbers look like versus just the raw numbers before going into the conference call. Again, hopefully you're interested in that, and if you are, consider following and subscribing. One thing overall to compass in terms of this video, I'm going to mention a little bit of correction. Thanks for pointing it out both on the YouTube and X side for both the commenters. Appreciate it. I'm going to go over additional information of expectations in terms of forecasts as well for Q4 earnings. Going to go over the technicals, additional information in terms of analysts, all that stuff. Hopefully you enjoy the video. If you find it beneficial towards the end, consider dropping a like. It does help with the channel, so thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. As well as Free Tax USA, link down below in terms of free tax software, free federal filing, and then state filing is $15. Using the link down below doesn't add additional cost to you. It just supports the channel, so thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. Used it in the past, same setup as TurboTax in terms of questions, and got the same return as well in terms of the numbers as well. Thanks again for awesome support. Appreciate it. Now, in terms of the numbers and everything I want to show, specifically the forecast first. So in terms of Investors Day, let me see if this is it. No, that's not it. It was on October 16th, 2024. So it was pretty recent. BlackBerry Investors Day on October 16th, 2024. I do have a replay on my channel. A video should pop up right about here. It's quite long, I will state. It's about 3.5 hours to 4 hours long. But overall, it's good, jam-packed with a lot of information. They stated, we hosted on our Investor Day, providing insights into our vision and future plans. Our executives shared strategic direction for our IoT and cybersecurity division, market opportunities, and our plans for profitable growth. The reason I'm showing this is because they did provide a little bit of forecast as well, and I'm going to adjust it based off of removing the silence side. Hopefully these numbers are correct. Like always, I'm not a professional, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. And I do own shares in BlackBerry stock, so be aware of that while you're watching this video. And also the correction I forgot to mention is in my latest video in terms of what you can expect for Q4, I stated that the sale of silence would be potentially reported on the revenue side. And then from that, the analysts would take that revenue out of the sale portion out of the revenue to look at the baseline and then do the comparisons, but that's not even going to happen. Thanks again for putting it out. I completely forgot because they bought silence for more money versus what they're selling. It's actually a loss at the end of the day. So it'll be reported predominantly as a loss overall in terms of reporting in terms of earnings, and that money coming in will be more on the cash portion of the earnings as well in terms of balances and cash flow, all stuff, right? So there's that. So quick correction. Thanks again for pointing that out, guys. Appreciate it. And with that, I want to go over the forecasts a little bit. So quick recap before I show this. Their expectations for this fiscal year coming up, fiscal year 2025, is between 517 to 526 million. This is what was reported on Q3 earnings, which was reported on December 19, 2024. In Q2, which was on September 26, 2024, they had the number 519 to 616 million. So obviously it's a drop in Q3 because they see that the silence portion of the revenue is going to be adjusted, so on and so forth. And then the cybersecurity side, we can see a drop as well. So cybersecurity revenue for Q2 was expected for fiscal year 2025 between 350 to 365 million. Now, after the sale of silence, all stuff adjustments were made to 267 to 271 million. So about a $9 million adjustment, right? $90 million adjustment. Hopefully I said that correctly. Now, if we're looking at that, this was, again, on October 16th during Investors Day, and their expectations for fiscal year 26, or actually, let me just state fiscal year 25. Fiscal year 25 was 591 million to 616 million. Again, this was on the Q2. So Investors Day was before their awareness of sale of silence. You could argue maybe they knew, but they moved in pretty impressively quick. So maybe they weren't even aware, they couldn't even adjust anything, and then they'll prelude to a bunch of stuff anyway. Either way, these numbers beforehand, by the way, fiscal year 23, 656 million, 635 million if you take out the patent sale, which was 853 million total. But you see year-over-year decline, and then again a decline, right? Unfortunately, but then potentially upside, and I'm going to point to that out as well. Analyst expectations are on the low side, which is beneficial. You could argue all this expectations on the low side is already baked into the share price, because overall the market's been pulling down everything for the most part, and BlackBerry is essentially not exempted from this. But it kind of shows overall great performance versus other stocks, and I'm going to show that soon as well. But either way, 591 to 616 before for fiscal year 25. But then if you look at the latest adjustments, 517 to 526. Again, cybersecurity is taking the biggest hit, about 90 million, give or take for the most part. So if you were to adjust to the latest forecast, fiscal year 26, about 620 to 650 million, take about 90 million, give or take, just estimates. You're looking at 530 to 560 million ballpark of revenue for fiscal year 2026. That falls in line with the analyst expectations. The analyst expectations for Q4, I think this got adjusted a little bit, is about 132 million, 133 million for Q4 coming in, which they're expecting BlackBerry about 126 to 135 million. So it comes in within the estimates. Even if it's 137, BlackBerry does typically beat their overall earnings in terms of earnings reporting. You see past 4 earnings, they've beat expectations and all stuff in what they forecasted. So hopefully that is the case. Even if it's 137 million, I'm expecting beating expectations and street estimates, all that stuff, more on the higher end. But either way, falls into terms of ballpark. And then for fiscal year 26, they're expecting about 500 and let's just say 550 million, but it's 548 million. And then the strange part is for fiscal year 25, they're expecting 554 million, which is higher than what BlackBerry has stated. But I believe that this was not updated, because if you go back to it must had to be updated, because before in Q2 it was quite high, 591 to 660 million, significantly higher than 555. So maybe analysts are expecting some kind of additional revenue coming in, but we'll see. But BlackBerry forecasted 517 to 526 for fiscal year 2025, which is lower than what street estimates are. But then the street estimates are expecting a drop for the next fiscal year 2026, at 548 million. So given the range that I stated earlier, 530 to 560, that would fall in line with street estimates. And then technically we could be higher than that. The reason why I'm stating that is because technically from what BlackBerry stated in the past, and I would say this is more of a coin flip, and I'm going to explain why. So they stated that essentially IoT is growing, QNX essentially, they didn't state this, but it seems like it's going to be the bread and butter of BlackBerry for the most part moving forward, essentially. But it's still taking time to grow. It is growing overall. But then in terms of silence side, they stated that essentially requires more time and investments to grow the silence to what it should be. But when the other portions of the division are growing, they rather focus on those portions to grow them in terms of higher multiples than deviating more to focus to silence, when it would take quite a bit of manpower and money and all stuff, etc., etc. So the sale of silence is beneficial, hypothetically, so they can focus more on those divisions, and those would rise up and basically subdue the difference overall from what we've seen the silence drop in terms of revenue being removed. So you could argue, while they did sell the portion of silence, or sell silence, and then the revenue is being taken out, and the difference could be mitigated with the other division or other sectors of the division performing well and rising up to the occasion in a way to increase the revenue, and therefore matching up to the 620, 650 earlier that they gave, especially with the QNX being the breadwinner and then hypothetically rising. Now there is a caveat to this whole entire thing, because technically the security communications with it, which was previously cybersecurity division, could rise up to the occasion and then hypothetically mitigate the difference that we're seeing from previous removal of silence in terms of revenue. But I think that would be quite substantial of a jump for that division right off the bat. I think we would see it more so later on. And then you could argue maybe the QNX side could step up. But if you're looking at Q3, right? But there is a positive light to all this. It's not just doom and gloom. I'm basically just stating the facts, at least from what I'm seeing. And then you could adjust from what you're seeing as well. But the IoT division, they're expecting revenue coming at 60 to 65 million for Q4, which is not in a way that great, because if you do quarter over quarter, and I know business comes in cycles, so it's not necessarily the greatest way to look at it, but it was 62 million. And I think previous year was, I can't remember exactly in terms of the Q4, I could pull it up soon. But either way, it's 62 million from the last quarter for Q3. So essentially flatline for the most part, Plus we see auto sales, a little bit of headwinds coming in, plus the tariffs and all that stuff. So given that, I know they're trying to get away in terms of focusing only on auto with having different services within pre-existing vehicles and all that stuff. But until that happens fully, like in terms of full throttle, I still expect that QNX will a little bit see some headwinds. And given that, then it might be a little bit more difficult to offset the sale of Silence in terms of revenue coming in with previous projections of 620 to 650 million to be getting closer to that ballpark. If they do, that'd be awesome because they essentially, because street estimates expectations from analysts are on the low side, then that would be quite significantly of a decent, really good beat in my opinion, because it beats everything in terms of outlook, forecast, shows year-over-year growth, all that stuff. Or actually, technically, it beats not outlook, but street estimates, because the outlook they did not provide. Technically, they did in terms of Investors Day, but at least they meet the outlook, hypothetically, but you'll have year-over-year growth, because again, for Q3, they stated that fiscal year 2025 will be 517 to 526. 530 to 560 shows year-over-year growth, but it's not necessarily massive. But if they had the 620 to 650, then it'll show a decent, substantial year-over-year growth, and then beat street estimates and all that stuff, etc., etc. But there's that. And then in terms of analysts, what they're stating, or not necessarily just stating, let me see if I can pull this up. Here's one statement. It's lately, or came out lately in terms of Robinhood. BlackBerry has a good growth runway in automotive, software, and secure communications. This was why William Kerwin, CFA, Morningstar. You can see that Robinhood has increased as well their fair value to $3.80, but uncertainty is very high. At the same time, it's not guaranteed, all that stuff, right? This was updated on March 6, 2025. And at the same time, we've seen other expectations or analyst expectations increasing as well. As of March 29th, 2025, analyst price targets for BlackBerry Limited vary across different sources, reflecting a range of opinions on its future stock performance based on the latest available data. Average price targets, recent analyst consensus suggests an average 12-month price target ranging from approximately $3.44 to $4.45 US dollars for the New York Stock Exchange listed stock BB, BlackBerry, right? So what I want to state that is analyst price targets are increasing, which is a good sign. So if they're increasing while they're aware of these numbers for the most part, and they're removing the silence revenue as well and all stuff, et cetera, if we get a beat and a decent beat, hopefully this is the case. Hopefully somehow they project offsets where the other portions of this, or not cybersecurity, but secure communications, step up to the plate now and increase their revenue while they're focusing more on that. Because again, that focus, the silence portion now no longer has to be focused to it anymore. It can be more focused on those portions of the sectors of the division. Then essentially, hypothetically, from what they stated, is those portions of revenue should be growing. And if that is the case, hopefully a year is enough where they could forecast more of a 620 to 650, maybe even higher, hopefully. But again, I own shares in the company, so be mindful. I'm more positive in a way. So while you're watching this video, be mindful of that while you're watching this video. Try to be unbiased as much as possible, but be mindful again. But hopefully this projection does come true, beating street estimates, all that stuff. And then if that is the case, what I want to state that in terms of analyst expectations on the lower side, et cetera, because again, adjustments, all stuff, then you could argue the price of BlackBerry stock already has baked in all this expectations in a way. And then these drops are predominantly more so for the market getting pulled down overall. And BlackBerry naturally, obviously, is not going to be avoiding this pull down for the most part. I would say it's been doing a pretty decent job, because I want to show one thing. So let me see. So if you're looking at this, I'm going to go over technicals as well and all that stuff. And then I want to show RSI in terms of it being oversold or not oversold and all that stuff. But if you're looking at BlackBerry stock for Friday, right? Friday was the 27th, I believe, or in the March 28th. Sorry about that, March 28th. So it dropped about 0.88%. Still a decent drop, I would say. But if you look at the other stocks, I'm going to show later on. But this is a 1-year chart, so I'm going to get back to that later on. But at the 1-year chart, you're looking at BlackBerry, it actually went up 40%, right? I know obviously it's not a great interpretation, because always time frame captures is not great interpretation growth, but it actually has been doing pretty well overall comparing to other stocks and the market overall. Again, this is not a great representation 100%, but you could see other stocks. NVIDIA for the 1-year mark right about here, just show you 1-year mark, 21% went up, right? So BlackBerry went up about 41%, NVIDIA went up 20 to 21%. So outperformed NVIDIA for a 1 year comparison. And then NASDAQ, looking at the 1 year chart, about 5%, arguably so, in the 1 year chart, so it's to outperform NASDAQ. And these are ETFs. SPY is ETF for NASDAQ, or S&P. So this one's about 6% for the S&P. So the NASDAQ was before QQQ. Tesla is about 47%. So Tesla would have been better. But at the same time, Tesla has taken a massive hit in terms of overall market appearance and all stuff because of what's been happening lately, which is unfortunate. And then AMD that we saw, 43% drop. And then Amazon, about a 7% increase. And then for, let me see, Apple, right about here, we see about 27% increase. And then Meta, I believe Meta was a drop. Meta was about, or no, 20%, let's just say 20%. It's 18%, but 18% increase, 20% increase, give or take. And then Microsoft was about 11% drop. So arguably so, within a year, BlackBerry has been performing pretty decent. I know it was coming from a low, so anything higher would be a massive percentage increase. But then for Friday, it dropped about 0.88%. I'm just stating that in terms of market performance, it's actually not doing too bad. That's actually what I want to state. And then if you're looking at NASDAQ, it dropped to almost 3%, but 2.62%. So it dropped obviously less than NASDAQ. And then for S&P, it dropped about 2%, give or take. These are just ballpark anyway, because they're ETFs. And so it dropped less than the S&P. And then NVIDIA dropped 1.62%, so it dropped less than NVIDIA. And then for Tesla, dropped about 3.53%, so it dropped less than Tesla. So basically, in terms of performance, it's actually not too bad if you've been averaging the whole entire time, depending on your entries, right? So that's the key factor. And then if you're looking at the RSI, if it's oversold and all stuff, I believe this is, where is it? Right about here. So this is the 1 day. The 1 day is on the overbought, actually, surprisingly enough, which is kind of interesting. But then the 1 week, 1 month, 3 month, I think it's oversold. So I'm going to play this quickly right about here. The 1 week, you can see, this is the RSI right about here. Hopefully I can show you. So RSI, if it was on the higher end, it's overbought. Low end is oversold. And it's a little bit difficult to show exactly because it keeps popping up. But hopefully you could see it. Let me see if I just do this. It should disappear soon. Okay, so you can see oversold. 1 month oversold. 3 month almost oversold, but pretty much oversold. Year to date oversold for the most part. 1 year almost oversold as well. And then the 5 year is in the mid zone, and then the alt chart is in the mid zone as well. And at the same time, within the ranges, if you're aware of all these other ranges, with I believe it's called the Boolean range and all stuff, it's on the low end too as well. So hypothetically, you could be expecting a bounce, which correlates with the MACD line as well. If you look at the MACD line right about here, I think the 1 month, it should be curving up soon, or it is trying to curve up, but it's on the bullish side right now. But technically, you argue, you come down to the bearish side. The 3 month chart is on the bullish side, but you can see some strength, so continuation potentially on the bullish side. 6 month chart crossing over to the bullish side, so technically you could argue upside's coming. Upside is coming. Let me minimize this for a sec so it's easy to see. But you could argue upside could be coming, and I want to show one thing. So for the 1 year chart, more bearish side could be coming, but you could argue we're bouncing off the 100-day moving average of the 1 year chart, which is about $3.83. We did close at $3.92 US dollars. But that $3.83 could provide enough of a bounce or hold and support until earnings gets reported, and potentially bouncing off of that, where this starts curving up, because we did have enough downside where the upside could start curving up, and it's not guaranteed that it could go up all the way, because we could get continuation pull down like we saw before here. Hopefully that is not the case. Hopefully the numbers are awesome, but potentially we could be curving up where we're at right now. And then if you're thinking more downside could be coming, then technically the 5 year chart is showing potentially more downside, hopefully short-lived by the earnings, good reportings, and then get pulled up. Like we've seen back here, basically, it wasn't earnings, but like, for example, we were in the bearish movement and got pulled up back in August of 2024, right? So this could be short-lived. And if you're thinking it's going to be going down lower anyway, bounce off hopefully the 50-day moving average or 100-day moving average of the 5 year chart, you're looking at $3.55. And then the alt chart essentially showing potentially more upside, but the volume has coming on the sell side predominantly. But we're seeing good traction overall. The company is moving well. The new management team is doing well in terms of moving fast, sale of silence, being cash flow and profitable and all stuff, cash flow positive. And then we're technically starting to see the curvature to the actual potential year-over-year growth if the forecast and that outlook comes in for fiscal year 2026 is favorable overall. And if that is the case, then we could potentially see upside coming overall, and then this is the baseline. And if that is the case, then technically this could be potentially providing good buying opportunities. The reason why I'm stating that is the surprises that could be coming in. Them reporting 8 a.m. versus 5:30 p.m. potentially could be because they're going to be showing the beat in terms of street estimates, all stuff like we've seen in the past, plus combined with due to the share price. This is just my opinion. Again, I do own shares in the company, so be aware of that while watching this video. And I'm not a professional, but because the price has dropped down a decent amount, right? Because we were at one point, I think it was like $6.30 or something like that. Let me just go back 3 months or something. So about, give or take, ballpark, about $6.30 almost, or I think we hit 6.33, 6.32. Given it rose up and then came down, and then beforehand they mentioned about share buybacks and then potentially dividends. I don't think dividends will be in play at all because it's just too early. But I do like that they mentioned it. But at the same time, the share buyback, I think that is a possibility in my opinion, and they mentioned it multiple times. So given where the share price is at right now, I think this would be a good time to mention that not only do they beat street expectations, all stuff, etc., but they're going to do share buyback. And if that is the case, then I would expect that all these indications, they're essentially, in a way, technically pointing to upside in a way, and then showing support to lower levels as well at the same time. But the indications that are pointing to the downside to meet the support level, and then indications pointing to upside would all pretty much, not all pretty much, but let me clarify this because I'm saying up at the same time as well. The ones that are pointing down and then going to a support level, those would reverse to the upside if that makes sense. And then those upside indications will get stronger fueled to show more stronger strength to the upside, which basically, for example, what I want to show is the all chart right about here. It's still in the bullish movement based off MAC line. Yes, the volume coming in is more on the sell side, but I think this would be more converted to the stronger side of the upside, where it would start becoming a solid green again, and then the volume or the data coming in would be converted to more of the buy side, if that makes sense. So basically, that's what I wanted to state. But essentially, hopefully this is the bottom, but essentially if we're looking at the bottoms, we're looking at 380, 355. Hopefully those are solidified as purely the bottoms. Again, uncertainty is in the air hypothetically because with the auto sales potentially taking a hit, we've seen the auto sector taking a hit in terms of their share prices, for example, Ford and all that stuff, etc. And then the auto sales in terms of tariffs too and all that stuff. There is uncertainty, but hopefully that does get reversed. Hopefully there's optimism in terms of the earnings, especially with them reporting at 8 a.m. I would assume that they kind of saw some headwinds ahead of time, being aware of the tariffs. It's not like they came out of nowhere. People were expecting tariffs anyway in general. So hopefully there's some positive light they share in terms of earnings, and share buyback would be a nice surprise in my opinion. If that is the case, I'm expecting the share price to rise. Hopefully. I mean, it would have to be, in my opinion, because obviously supply and demand. But thanks again for watching. That's basically it for today's video. If you found it beneficial, consider dropping a like. It does help the channel, so thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks again for watching. Take care. God bless and peace.